So today I want to talk about the importance of decision trees. Um, when I'm talking with people, like they've got like, hey, we've got our SharePoint, and there's lots of things that people will complain about in SharePoint that they can't find things or not up to date. But it seems to me that what one of the key things they're missing is they are missing a key tool you need in your tool belt if you're going to drive consistency and reduce escalations, and that's decision trees. So, Jonathan, you've worked with a lot of people. Um, what's your, I guess, obviously you don't want to use a decision tree for everything. Tell us a little bit about decision trees and how you've seen it impact organizations when they get the right ones in place.
Yeah, well, I guess I'll just go back to what we typically see before decision tree is implemented. One is people don't want to document stuff that's really complex because they've tried it before. They've tried sitting down in front of a Word document, start typing, and they're just like, but hold on. No, if I do that, but there's this thing, there's always some other variable that you have to include in your Word doc. So they just like, you know what, forget it. I'm not going to write anything down. And they just don't write it. And they're so the document or the procedure never gets captured and they become the bottleneck forever after because you always have to go to that person to get information. I spoke with one group where, this is a very common one. I was at a conference yesterday. We were talking about situations where a member of a credit union passes away and you need to get funds out of their account. How do you do that? Well, it's actually pretty complicated. And that's, I learned yesterday it's actually a big pain point for a lot of credit unions. So I worked with one credit union though, where literally for like 15 years, they're like, we've been trying to do this, but I just can't, I just don't know how to explain it. Like I can't get it on paper. And because of that, they always had to go to her for answers. Like she was the only one who understood the landscape well enough to know what questions to ask and all that stuff. So that's one thing is it's so complex that you're just not going to document it. The second option is, or the
Well,
second thing that'll, oh
actually,
yeah,
let me just zero in on or double down on that. I've heard you say before that people have like told you like this is too complex to document. Like
yeah,
we can't do it. It can't be done. And things I've seen, I remember talking with one credit union, they were taking 16 hours to write a procedure. That's a sign that you've got way too much complexity in the procedure. And another thing I've heard is like, okay, compliance keeps coming back and saying, hey, these are the knowledge centers these are the articles that you need to focus on because this is where we're seeing mistakes. And so there's this belief that, okay, if we just write it better, in the help article or the documentation, that somehow. So you have on one end, you have the people that are saying it's impossible to do,
right.
and the other, they're just like, okay, if we just write the Word document better, then it'll work.
Yeah, and the Word document that you typically will see in that situation, we've all seen them, is you follow some steps and it says, if the situation is A, go down to step 7. And if it's B, then just keep going down. And those are very challenging to follow. And
Yeah.
frankly, when we go through those documents as well, we'll see that there's a lot of gaps because it's hard to kind of identify what you haven't accounted for as a variable. Like sometimes it'll say, if the person has this in their account, then go ahead and do these things. It's like, well, what if they don't have it in their account? But it's
What
it's
do I
never
do?
addressed because it's kind of hard to see that as you're just going in a linear fashion in the document. So yeah, so either we see it's too complicated, I can't get it, so it's nothing's written down, which then forever after you have to rely on memorization, you have to rely on tribal knowledge, or you have to rely on always asking somebody for help. Flip on the other side of it, it's documented. And like, yeah, same thing. Like, if we could, we'll just have a really huge, gigantic Word document. It's got everything in there. It can pass an audit, but no one's actually going to follow it. So you go back to the same thing of we got to go ask Susan what we're doing here and how to do it. And so, yeah, those are kind of the two situations that we find. And like you said, it's not like you're doing this for every procedure, but like there's always, especially if we're talking with financial institutions, it's like lending. There's so many complicated things in lending with setting up new people like a credit union or a bank. Like there's a lot of stuff that's just variables. Troubleshooting. So if someone comes in, calls in, it's like, hey, I'm having trouble with X, Y, or Z. You're going to have those variables. And so it's not going to be 100%, but there's certain areas where it's like it could be up 20% of your documentation may need to be account for some of these variables because the fact is just things are complicated. They make variables determine what you're going to do or what you're not going to do based on the situation. So I don't know that I kind of rambled on there a little bit, but that's kind of what we see around that. But go back to what was the original question you wanted to answer for?
Well, I guess I feel like this is a tool that people, not everybody recognizes that they need in their tool belt. It's kind of like, hey, we've got a SharePoint, or we've got an AI chat. We don't need a decision tree. And I'll tell you another way I see people trying to address this is they will have their IT team build out some sort of decision tree functionality.
Hmm.
And or they're using something like a walk me or a what fix that are building that in. And the challenge I see there is those become very rigid. Any changes have to go through a development team to
Yeah.
make modifications, and so it becomes very brittle.
Well, I was
And
going to say, not only do you have to go through those to get modifications, but the thing you just hit there is brittle is if things change, the thing breaks. Like
yeah.
if your screen changes, then it can shut the whole thing down because yeah, that node or whatever it is, isn't there anymore. So that can create a problem.
Now, what would you say, like, so what have you seen when people put these decision trees in place? What happens to the inconsistencies, the escalations? What are the outcomes you've seen?
So the first place we tested this was ourselves because we were getting a lot of support tickets from customers who were trying to set up single sign-on. So, we have our product screen steps. They were trying to authenticate whether it's Google or or at the time,
Salesforce, and it was Microsoft. There was a
all that.
bunch.
Yep. And so we got a bunch of tickets in of people saying, "Hey, I'm getting lost, or I did this and it's getting errors, and they can't do it." And that's because when I looked at our documentation, we were trying to solve the problem like everybody else. We had a bunch of articles, we had really lengthy articles, we had links to things because we didn't have decision trees. So when we were looking at developing the decision tree, we built it, and I was like, the first thing I'm going to test this on is our single sign-on situation. And so we put it in there. I just had one article for how to set up single sign-on, and it just walked people through. Are you setting this up with Salesforce, Active Directory, whatever? They got to click it. They went down to specific instructions just for them. It didn't push them out to any other place. It had everything just in one flow, and it only showed them the stuff that they needed to find. I remember the first time I did it, someone said, "Hey, I need help setting up single sign-on." And I was like, "Oh, okay. I'm gonna send them this article. We're gonna see what happens." I send it out, and I never got a response. I followed up 2 days later. I was like, "Hey, everything go okay?" She's like, "Oh yeah, followed the guide and walked me through everything. It's all set up. It's good to go." And I was like, "Oh my, hallelujah, that it works." And after that, we got like no requests about how to set up single sign-on. If they say, "Hey, how do I do this?" I'd send them the article and they'd be fine. No errors, no problems. So that was our first test that we experienced. And we continued to see that for other procedures we did with those decision trees. We then had customers start using them. So one of the first customers that we really put this in place with was for a medical device troubleshooting call center. So patients would call in, they'd say, "I'm getting this error code. How do I resolve it?" Well, in the past, this was all captured in some PDFs, and really it was just everyone's memory. Like that's really what it came down to. Everyone had their own way of doing their troubleshooting, but they needed to start hiring on new employees. So they brought us in so we could build out these decision trees for troubleshooting. And everyone now could handle the every error code consistently. So all the new hires follow the same pattern. And if there was any sort of any sort of problem with the flow or with the path for troubleshooting, they could update the guide, and now it was back on track. So now you had the situation before where someone had to watch for 18 months to learn what are all the nuances around this error code and this error code and that error code. They had to memorize it all. And now within 4 to 6 weeks, like employees were handling these calls and they were acting like experts because the expert put all that stuff into the decision tree, all their knowledge and all the points of like this, that, or the other thing. And now others could apply it
Well,
without
and
having to
I
be fully experts.
and I remember that one. And one of the big things was now not only could they apply it, everybody applied it the same way.
Yeah.
We had total consistency there, and then you could optimize it.
Yeah.
Because you really can't optimize a procedure until you've got consistency. If everybody's doing it a different way, we can't tweak it to make it more efficient. But as soon
Yep.
as they had that decision tree, it's so clear what to do in those complex scenarios. Now, if you adjust it, everybody adjusts to that new behavior.
Yeah. So, yeah, faster onboarding, more consistency, and better quality. Because I would hear all the time, like whenever we would kind of get started with these projects, people like, okay, well, go listen to Steve. He's an expert at this. He knows what he's doing. Follow, like, listen to his call, and he's great. So I go and I listen to the call, and this happened consistently across the board when I do these projects. We listen to these calls, and halfway through, the rep who's the expert's like, oh, wait, I forgot. Let me go back and get this information or do this thing. Or they'd get to the end of the call and then they realize, oh, wait, hold on, I need to do this other thing. Like even the experts would kind of forget what their checklist was or what the decision points that the questions they're supposed to ask to get clarity. And then they would make the call last longer, or they'd have to go do rework or post call work, afterwards. But with the decision trees and when people following that, that's gone because they're not having like, oh, wait, I forgot this other thing. It's like, no, the first question you ask puts you on this path, which then has a very clear flow of what you should do. So
So,
that was really good.
yeah, honestly, it's so funny because I hear this a lot that people say, we're going to take our best troubleshooters, we're going to take their call recordings and we're going to give it to AI, and then AI will tell everybody else what to do. And I always go back to these experiences you've had where your best people aren't actually doing it the most efficient way.
No.
And it's because nobody's ever really sat down. AI can give you insights there, but with a decision tree, what you're doing is you're saying, I'm gonna design an experience of the right way to do this and the most efficient way to do this. That now, no matter who we talk to in our business or our contact center, whatever that is, they're gonna follow the same process every single time.
Yeah. And just as kind of a side note on that, because sometimes in a call center or in customer, anyone who's customer facing, it's easy to let the customer direct the call and drive the call, and you
Yeah.
kind of lose control a little bit, and you're just kind of like, okay, you take me, and then the call flows give that individual more confidence and more clarity around you're directing the call, you're driving this to where it needs to be. So they might go on for like, oh, I'm experiencing all this stuff. I was like, okay, but let's bring it back to this beginning. Is your computer plugged in? Right. The first question.
Yeah.
If it's not, we're stopping there.
Yeah.
But anyway, but it helps you kind of go back to let's not miss any of these variables that might be important when handling this procedure or the situation. And we talked about call centers, we talked about customer care stuff, but even in the financial industry, we built some of these with a customer for the lending department because that can get very tricky, especially if you're putting in a new lending service or system. And so, there's a lot of buttons to click. There's a lot of decisions to make, a lot of variables around if you're giving a loan for a vehicle. Is it a new vehicle or is it a used vehicle? You're getting it from a dealership or from some person down the street. If it's from like not from a dealership, does it have a lien on it? Okay, does it have a second lien? Like there's all these things that go into it. And we were able to build those, and they could put somebody new in the seat following that guide, and they could process a loan perfectly every time. And those can get kind of hairy. So it empowers people, whether you're handling stuff in front of a customer and you're using it, or it's back office work. Like it just makes it so much clearer what needs to be done, the flow, the proper order of steps you need to take, and you're not leaving anything out that could be really important.
Yeah, and so I think, when I'm looking at decision trees, they do take a little bit more work to build than
Oh yeah,
than a regular article, right?
it's an
Regular articles,
investment.
it's an investment. But I'm thinking like if this is a place where I just can't afford a mistake, then I'm going to build a decision. If there's variable, if it's a complex thing, I can't afford a mistake, or I'm finding people are struggling. So it's kind of two sides of the equation. If a mistake here would be really costly, let's build that decision tree because that's going to eliminate 98% of our issues.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I'm finding people really struggling with this, I can't simplify a process, but I can clarify it with a decision tree and make it so they can perform.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like right now, there's some things like, oh, just automate it with AI or automate the stuff. It's like, well, some of our customers don't have that option. Like
Yeah.
they have what they have. And then whether it's an old legacy system or a new system, like you have limitations based on your environment. And so, like you said, you may not be able to make it an easier procedure, but you can certainly clarify a complex procedure so that people can handle it. I mean, because like for example, speaking about an investment, like we had one group there. It's a utilities. I don't want to say utilities company. What would you say? It's like a city utilities
Municipality. Yeah.
municipality. Yeah. Uh, Out on the West Coast. And so they had a bunch of call center reps who basically were just taking information and escalating every call to somebody who has been there for years and memorized the stuff and did it. And they actually had to spend like 6 months building out some of these flows to really get them right. Because what they discovered is they looked at their existing documentation and as they start putting in I mean, this is kind of what we were touching on a little bit before.
Yeah.
When you start putting your documentation from Word into a ScreenSteps workflow article, you start seeing all the gaps and the holes in the process because it forces you to say
Yeah.
this or that. And you're like, oh shoot, we haven't actually figured out that. We know what we're going to do for this, but what do we do for that? And
It doesn't
so,
allow the procedure to hide. Like you
yes,
have to decide what the procedure is.
yeah. So that really does it does a good job of forcing you for that. And I've heard lots of people say like this has been such a helpful process to go through with ScreenSteps because it helped us just clarify what we even do. Because before you can just kind of be general and be like, yeah, we kind of do this stuff. It's like, no, like let's get specific. What buttons do we click and what fields do we update? And it gets really clear. So anyway, she spent about 6 months doing that. So it was an investment. It took a lot of time and energy. However, when they launched it, all of their reps now were handling things on their own. Escalations vanished. The time, like the hold time decreased significantly. The handle times for these calls decreased significantly. So yes, it took some time, but boy, the results from that
Well, it's
were
like you've just
huge.
hired like a whole new team when that
Yeah.
happens, when those
Yeah.
escalations drop. And you look at subject matter experts, when they have the tool of a decision tree, where they can create that, like, hey, I'm getting this all the time and I can create this. I'm allowing other people to think about the problem or the task the exact same way that I do. So I can help them perform like an expert without them having to be an expert yet. It's going to help them on that journey, obviously, but they don't have to have arrived there yet. And so I think a lot of organizations aren't realizing this is an important tool to have in your tool belt when you have a compliance issue, you have a consistency issue, you have an escalation or confusion issue. You can target those out. And I mean, they get eliminated almost overnight when you build the decision tree.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things I want to talk about too, if you're, if we can kind of shift gears a little bit,
Yeah.
is, I've seen people build out flowcharts. Now, I was a CPA. I went to accounting school. I love flowcharts. Like I love looking at processes.
Yeah.
And when people show me flowcharts, I'm like, this is awesome. You designed your procedures. But sometimes they're like, well, we have a flowchart. Can our employees just use a flowchart? So let's talk a little bit about that.
We're migrating a customer right now, right? That they were using
That's the way they
flowcharts for.
went. Yeah, it
Yeah,
was rough.
it was very rough.
But yeah,
It's
so
good
I
in
mean,
theory. It's very good in theory.
it's good in theory. And what I've found is I like flowcharts, and I've found other people who like to make flowcharts, they like flowcharts. But the majority of people in our company do not want to pull up a flowchart when they're handling a procedure.
Well, and I think I don't want to, it's like flowcharts are very good in
At
designing a
designing,
business process
yeah,
and seeing it from a high level. That's very good. It is not a performance tool.
yeah, yeah. So flowchart, so that's just one thing. And that actually, I'm going to talk about something else as well, but I kind of want to just even identify when it comes to ScreenStep's workflow articles and the decision trees, you do have to have defined like what are the inputs that we're responding to. So you do have to have some clear operational things. Because like sometimes, we work in an environment where new things are coming in all the time from like a customer support thing. And it's like questions we haven't heard before, situations we haven't really observed. Creating a flow chart or creating a workflow article for those things can be challenging because it's like, man, we haven't seen this before. We haven't designed it yet.
Not narrow enough. It's too broad.
Too broad.
Yeah.
So this is really like workflow articles are really great for environments where it's like, you know what, we get like 100 of these questions a day, and we know what these questions are going to be. We've designed essentially a process for. We may not have maybe we've captured it in flowcharts or documentation. Maybe we haven't, but there is like a routine that we can follow. Like there is some repeatability around the
Well,
operations.
and I'd push back a little bit on that. It's not that you get 100 of them a day. It could be you get this once a month.
Maybe once, yeah,
But but
but it's a defined process.
somebody in the organization knows how to handle it. That's the
Yes.
key thing. And so they can get it out of their head into a decision tree.
Yeah. So I guess my point is if you're in a situation environment where you're getting a whole bunch of new types of questions or requests that you haven't really prepared, like for that's going to be you can build the decision trees for future use,
Yeah.
but that's just like if that's kind of your environment, it's tricky. But a lot of the environments we go into, it's like they have sort of identified here are the things that we're getting asked, here are the procedures that we have. Like we have all of that, we know it, we just haven't articulated in a way that people can follow easily.
We
So
haven't
that's
clarified what people are supposed to do.
yeah, yeah.
When you haven't clarified what people have to do, you have to talk to an expert because they have to figure that out on the fly in their mind based on their, years and years of knowledge.
Yes, exactly. So part of the process that we take customers through really is, the first step that we go through is we figure out like what are the things that you guys do, and we talk to the experts to say on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly, quarterly, annual. Like let's talk about what are these reports you got to fill out, or the questions you got to field, or whatever. And then we kind of identify these ones would be good workflow articles. Let's knock those out, and we can get that. So that's one piece.
Well,
Um,
and let me say, like, if you're in an organization, a prime place to look at it, a lot of organizations have escalation centers. And so if you have an escalation center, you can look through, okay, what is getting
yeah.
escalated? That's a prime thing. Or you have a compliance team. You look
What's
through
going back
that.
for rework?
What's going back for rework? A QA team. You've got a QA team. What are they flagging people on? So compliance, escalations, QA, and then if you don't have any of those things, just go talk to the supervisors. That those kind of knowledge bottlenecks in your organization. Say, what are people coming to you for help with?
Yeah, and even like if you don't have a super sophisticated way of tracking all that stuff, look in Slack or Teams,
Yeah.
or ask people to look in that, or look in your ticketing system to see. So escalation system, or just in your ticketing system or email, just finding those ones where it's like things are being passed around. Say, hey, how do we do this? What's this? How do we do that? Those are prime examples of great places to start for that. So yeah, I guess the other, I guess so, comparing, right? I guess I don't know. I guess I'm looking for like what are people, maybe how are people trying to solve this problem without, I guess there's a couple things I'm kind of trying to articulate here is like maybe what's the situation where people would want to just bring in screen steps workflow articles? Like what are they
Which are what we
doing
call decision
currently?
trees, just so people are clear. We call decision trees workflow articles and screen
Right,
steps.
right. So the decision tree. So where, like, what are the situations where someone would want to use our decision trees? And I guess do we want to talk about like sometimes people want the whole screen step solution, and like we can have the knowledge base with the regular articles and all that plus the decision trees. Other times people just, they're like, you know what, we already have our little wiki, we're fine with it, but we're really lacking in this area of decision trees.
Well, and typically it's not like we have our little wiki. It's we have our SharePoint or Salesforce knowledge or whatever it is with thousands of articles already in
Yeah.
it.
And so the
Um,
idea of switching to screen steps for the knowledge hub is kind of like a non-starter. Like we're not going to switch this right now.
yeah, yeah.
But there's a huge gap in those, 20% of the procedures they're doing where they don't have that ability to use to do decision trees. So let's talk, I guess, talk a little bit about that. Like, what are some areas where you could just, hey, just bring in the decision trees. And that's all you're going to, that's all you do.
Well, I mean, it's really easy. You can link from those other systems to the decision trees, or you can even embed them in some of those systems. And so when you're doing that, it's adding another tool to your tool belt. You're not going to pull it out for every situation that comes up, but there with those targeted in situations, you now have a way to effectively solve the problem. And the way I see people trying to solve it without this is they say we need more training. Like that's
Mm.
usually what people say. We need more training. So they do, lunch and learns or training. They're trying to create everybody to have all the expertise that that person who's been there 10, 20, 30 years has.
That's a good point because what we're trying to do is we're trying to recreate that expert who has all of that context and can
Yeah.
make judgment calls effectively in that moment. And
Yeah.
so we're essentially we're trying to create a bunch of people who can yeah, I guess make those judgment calls. That's really what it is and that's
Yeah.
like such a difficult task.
And when you look at performance, if you don't have a recipe, if you don't have something like a decision tree, you have to have expertise. Well, you have to have a lot of nuanced experience in order to do that.
Mm,
And even then, you'll make mistakes because, the human mind isn't designed to work that way. So
right.
it's really that the organization hasn't done the work to really define all these paths. And even if they have, that work then is not in a format. Maybe it's a flow chart, maybe it's in a 40-page document. It's not in a format that somebody can apply it in the moment they need it. So we're helping you both define it and apply it.
Yeah. So, another question I have is, how do we sort of get started with making a decision tree? Because I do see
Actually,
some.
before we go there, I think one other thing that I see people using instead of a decision trees right now a lot is AI. So
Okay.
they're putting the procedure into an AI chatbot and saying, okay, now tell me what to do.
Hmm.
And so here's what I've heard and what I've seen. One is that can work very well for short procedures. But what the AI usually is doing is rewriting the procedure in that chat interface. Now, if you're in a regulated industry, this actually is
You don't
a
really want
huge,
generative AI in that moment.
yeah. So I talked to a financial institution. They're like, it was combining our procedures and inventing really a new one for the situation. So it's not the fault of the AI. The fact is when we go in and build these decision trees, we find out these organizations haven't decided these things.
Hmm.
So AI, when it doesn't have clarity, it fills in the gaps, right?
Yeah.
And so there's that challenge there. But also, if I've got like a 40-step procedure, a chatbot is not the ideal interface for working through that because I'm either getting a bunch of text at a time or I'm having to keep going back and answering questions, and that whole procedure is going to take a lot longer. Where a decision tree, it's walking me right through. So it's a better interface than a text chat to guide me through that process.
Mm.
So those are the things I see when people they're either creating more training, they're trying to build the master Word document that, that's like tilting at windmills because it's not a tool designed for this
I mean,
level of
some of them are
complexity.
40 pages long that we've seen.
Yeah.
And it's
Oh,
very
I've seen
challenging to
150
read.
pages for things. And or are they building the flowcharts, which like we said, they're not very useful in that moment. And then finally they're saying, okay, well, AI can solve this. We'll put the chatbot in place, and that's going to solve this problem.
Yeah, the thing I kind of the way I think about AI is AI is really helpful in in supporting me in creating stuff.
Yeah.
So we use AI a ton to help us build procedures because it's like we can amplify what this person knows in the creation of the procedure. But
Yeah.
then we want to solidify this is the procedure, and then we don't really want AI touching it in the delivery of that.
Yeah.
We're not trying to have it recreate it when someone's asking that question. The AI that we're using is actually pointing them to that right place. So, so AI is being used. Flow charts can be used. Word docs, what fix, walk me. There's things. Those are all kind of they're trying to solve that problem of how do we deal with the complexity of some of these procedures. Anything else that you'd add to that?
No, and I think let's wrap up this for today, and I think another time let's talk about how you build these out,
Okay.
and we can get into there. But I think the main takeaway here is decision trees are a key tool that you need if you're in a regulated industry, if you've got high complexity, if you're dealing with escalations, long
Troubleshooting.
troubleshooting. If you don't have something like this in place, you're going to try it with these other tools that aren't nearly as effective at
Mhm.
solving the problem. If you ever had that experience, I remember doing something in my house. My friend brought over this tool I didn't have, and this problem, it's like I've been trying to do this. It was so frustrating. I used the right tool, and it was solved in a second. And that's
Yeah.
really what decision trees are.
When you try to use a hammer for everything, it doesn't work out as well.
Doesn't work out as well. All right.
Awesome.
Well, we'll tackle these other topics another time. Thanks, Jay.
All right. Thanks.